ado, thank you, Franco, for being with us again this evening. I know it's late in Canada. We really appreciate you, and we love your sharing. And whatever you would like to start with, I think we're all open to that.
All right, so I'll start from the beginning here, and then we'll have a clean start. So this evening we've gathered together. I'm here in Canada, and you know, the work I've been doing for the last years, for the people that don't know me, I mean, I've been on this sharing of information for over 35 years now. And most of the work that I've been doing is doing private consultation, coaching, but I've also been doing group talks over the years, doing some courses and so forth for smaller groups along the way. And then over time, the groups got bigger. I was invited in different points of view. So the information I share is not polarized in any way. The information is based on higher consciousness that we all have access to. However, while we're playing the game, we may not have the same level of access that we normally would in regards to when it comes to, the day-to-day stuff. So because we've been so conditioned and programmed from everything we've heard, that knowing inside kind of goes into hibernation, and then we kind of think that, oh, this is the way life is. The progress that we're making right now, the shifting that's taking place at this point in time, it's really stimulating that knowing within ourselves to come to the surface so that we start to change our reality and how we play the game of life. And I've felt very strongly over the years, because of the information I already had within myself fairly active, because the soul that's in my body is actually the part that does the speaking through Franco, because Franco knows it quite a bit, but the soul has quite a heavy duty wisdom that it has access to. And it is also very skilled in the knowing of how the operating systems of the human game and planet Earth actually operates, because it was one of the engineers that retooled planet Earth, one of the head engineers that retooled planet Earth 15,000 years ago, and was involved with reseeding it and also creating the human bodies with a team. So it had returned at different stages to kind of monitor and see how things are going. Of course, everything went very different than the original design, because the original design was 15,000 years ago. Then 10,000 years ago, the design was changed. That change that occurred basically has played out for 10,000 years, and that's what we are living right now, where we are experiencing polarity, separation, where we have been, going from a natural, organic 3D level of consciousness expressed in a very powerful vessel and playground, to one that actually has minimized our capacities to a great deal, which was a great experiment, great experience, whatever it is. But right now we're going through that transformation where we are reactivating back to the original blueprint, original design that lasted for 15,000 years. So most of everything that we are seeing right now is stimulating changes within ourselves in ways where not only are we remembering, but we're actually reactivating our natural blueprint in the physical sense, which in that sense, what's happening is the body's completely rewiring. And of course, it's, we're going through the process of reactivating the DNAs. We're also reactivating what we call the crystal-based receiver within ourselves, because you probably heard from some people saying we're going from carbon-based to crystal-based, right? The original design was crystal. So what's crystal? Crystal is actually the formation of our cellular structure and the formation of our DNA. The reason crystal was used because it holds a lot more information. It holds a lot more of experience, but it also can hold more higher spectrums of light. So form is created in a way where it is very malleable, and it actually shifts very easily to match whatever experience we needed to create within ourselves. But also holding much more information, then we will experience things a lot more in detail. And that was kind of the design. So when it did modify 10,000 years ago, then it was introduced to a carbon base, which actually reduced the amount of information, the amount of consciousness accessibility, and the malleability of the physicality. So the physicality was less light, but more concentrated density, and it was experienced in that form. Then the operating system got modified. So, we've lived in a very polarized world where there's right, wrong, good, bad. You have to have the opposite to appreciate the other side of the opposite. Total disconnection to our divine essence, which is basically source. Because, when we look at who we are source. Just give me a second here. I'm just going to mute everybody that way. And anybody that wants to communicate afterwards, just I'll unmute you so I don't get any background noises. So with the changes that we went through with all the polarization and everything else, we disconnected from our source essence. Now, that does not mean we really truly disconnected. We disconnected from the communication level because we're still source essence. And our body only exists in source essence. It does not exist. Everything exists in source essence, that field, which they call the field, the quantum field, the field of all, but it's also 0.2 at the same time. So it's consciousness, frequency, and energy that we create into form. And that is created into form to experience ourselves in form as a playground and a way to come and experience ourselves on different playgrounds. So we lost that connection, so that whenever we embodied, because the body is made up of various elements, we have a body itself. Like if we're looking at the representation of who we are, whenever we take on a body, the body is an extension of Gaia. And Gaia is the energy that creates a platform we call human, and also what we call ourselves as humanoids on a planet called Earth, right? So Gaia has its consciousness that's shared with our body. And our body is really totally designed to connect with not only Gaia, but also the energy of our sun, the energy from our solar system, being from all the other planets, plus our galaxy that we're connected to or part of, and then the universe. So when we're experiencing ourselves in physical form, we have all that wisdom, we have all that capability. We also have a very natural blueprint that holds this physicality. Now the physicality has another uniqueness about it because the physicality has 12 DNA strands on an average. Some people have 9, as low as 9, it varies, and as high as 14. Each DNA is a representation of a species that is a donor species that we have a direct connection, because each DNA is actually a transmitter communicator. It's a transmitter receiver, actually. And now scientifically, they're starting to finally prove that, even though I've talked about it for many years, but now they're starting to come to that realization. When will it hit my mainstream? Who knows? But it is coming out more and more. So each of the DNAs communicate with a different species. Some are Pleiadian, some are Sirian or Turians. There's so many different species. We have 12, on an average, people have about 12 DNA strands, double helix, which carries information that has been tuned down. So most people, they have 12, but 10 don't operate. They've actually been converted to very carbon-based. The 2 that are active are very limited by the carbon-based structure that it was modified to. Now, part of the transformation is going into is the shifting back into the crystalline base of the DNA. That means that we would be able to communicate with the different species. Now, when I'm talking about communication, I'm not talking about telepathic communication, even though that's a possibility. We're talking about communication of experience, consciousness, and knowledge from different playgrounds that are experienced. Because, for us right now, as the different species go through their evolutionary part and their enlightenment part, they are communicating with us. Now, we're not integrating it in our human body. or haven't been for 12,000 years or 10,000 years. But in that case, now more and more that'll come in. So our actual blueprint starts to upgrade and change because of the input that's coming in from the different DNA strands, which are the different species. So that's the physical form. So the physical form has its own innate consciousness. It's a kind of a higher aspect of self within it, and it communicates with Gaia, and it communicates with the different species that are the contributors. So it is also connected to the sourceness of itself. So there's a tremendous amount of wisdom that the body has capable of. Once more active, then it actually is much more malleable. So that becomes more of a light field, and so that the body actually does not have to create and experience itself in the lost state of intensities through whatever the body may be experiencing now, today, as pain and sensorial. So the sensorial will be more enriched but less intensified, and it would be less overpowering, because now the sensorial part can become overpowering and dulled at the same time, depending on how we utilize it. So that becomes, so there's a huge enrichment that we're experiencing through the physicality. So it's becoming more alive. And the physicality also connects with other physicalities because it has a direct connection to it. And through that connection, it allows also to share wisdom and experiences in physical form. So if somebody figures out how to transform certain parts within the body or elevate certain parts of the body's functionality, it's shared within bodies to bodies. Plus all the experiences that one physicality has can be also shared, and it is online to share. So the human physical form is always increasing in its capacities and its wisdom. So, you know, when we're tuning into the body can tell a lot about our existence and our experience. And it has a history behind it also from its original design till now, that it has in its archives that we can utilize. Now, not to replicate any of that from the past, it's more to accentuate any part of it that it says, okay, how can we use it right now? So that's the physical form. We also have a human entity, and I know a lot of people do not understand that. Some people understand the whole concept of entities, because people say, oh, you have entities attached to you. Well, what is a human entity? It is kind of a soul, but it's not really a soul, an interdimensional soul. It is a localized soul. So it's a localized consciousness, a localized storage of information and experience that is utilized as form expression. So what happens is a physicality takes on a human entity. What a human entity does, it reincarnates. Okay, the physicality is different. The physicality will become part of Gaia and will come as part of Gaia, and it creates the form. The human entity, what it does is it reincarnates in different physical forms. It will go into male bodies, female bodies. It will go into different genders at different timelines and so forth. So the human entity was created 15,000 years ago. It has also been modified to about 10,000 years ago, but at the same time, the human entity stores the very useful information and awareness. So, for example, you've probably seen children that come along that have amazing gifts in scientific or artistic or something of that nature. That they've never been exposed to it. They've never learned from the typical stage, but all of a sudden they have this gift, this very powerful natural gift. And that usually is shared by the human entity. Okay. So the human entity is the part that actually has had other lives, that say was a musician. And each time it's elevated its skills and its music skills. So if it played the piano or played other instruments, or it was very vocal, so it could sing, or it just basically creates a certain information of tunes and whatever else, as each time it reincarnates, it has an opportunity to express it, but then also learn from that expression from the different incarnations and different times that it goes through, because the planet, of course, is changing. We're changing as a collective. So the human entity brings that to the table. Now, then we have the third part is the soul. Now, the soul is basically the higher self, but is a localized signature higher self, because the soul has a very independent signature. Okay, so what is the signature? The signature holds into, it's like an encodement, so that it has a self-expression, in the sense it has a very unique expression. Like, for example, somebody has telephone numbers, or a what do they call it? An address, an IP address, thank you. An IP address, right? It's very specific. So if you click that IP address or you call that phone number, you will reach a certain individual, right? So the soul has a particular signature for its uniqueness. So it registers based on that signature each and every incarnation it has. Now, the uniqueness about the soul itself, it does not only in most cases, it doesn't even reincarnate as a human on many cases, because the soul has the opportunity to reincarnate in human and incarnate in any other physical form from any other planet within a galaxy. And a galaxy can have up to 1,200 different playgrounds with 1,200 different physicalities, and each playground has variations in that. A soul can also be in non-form and choose not to reincarnate and become a role player in supporting other souls that do take on form. The soul itself is also connected to a twin soul, which has a duplicate signature. So there are two with identical signatures, but will go out and reincarnate in most cases on different playgrounds. And one may turn not into or chooses not to incarnate, but one does, and vice versa, and they can swap. At times they will both incarnate on the same planet. They may meet, and there's more of that happening these days than it used to, because it wasn't as popular before. And then there's, of course, a level of communication. Because if they have the same signature, the level of communication is much clearer, and there's a sharing back and forth. Now, there are more and more people that you hear that they meet their twin souls. We're not talking about soulmates. We're not talking about soul family, but we're talking about twin souls, which twins sometimes is referred as twin flames, right? But really basically because they're identical signature and they have a very close connection because of that signature. Now, when they do reincarnate together and they, come at different stages in their lives, and sometimes they can be both males, both females, one male, one female, one can be 10 years old, one can be 100 years old. There's no, fixed, but there are times that they are close in age and they choose to partner up and play a very specific role. So that's the first part. But then there are soul families, because each soul belongs to an oversoul, which is made up of totally 24 souls. Okay, so there's 12 souls, and each soul is a duplicate. So you're looking at 24 souls. And what happens is the oversoul is the riding soul that actually communicates with each of the souls. So your soul, your particular soul, has connection to your soul family, to this oversoul, and the oversoul communicates to all those other souls. And it has the capacity to bring in all the different wisdom as you require it to assist you, to move forward in a very specific way, because you're the one that chooses how you want to experience that. Now, the next level of the soul has the capacity, has soulmates. Now, what are soulmates? They don't have, I better back up a bit. As the soul families, the signatures are not identical. The last two digits of the signature is different. So because the signature is very similar except for the last 2 digits, the connection is much more powerful. The oversoul has a combination of signatures, so it's like a combination lock that has a lot of different combination codes that can open it. So we have even though the signature is a very open platform for the oversoul and not the other souls that are connected as a nucleus, like you're talking about the oversoul as the hub, and then you have all the other souls, which are a combination of 24, and you're one of them, and your twin souls are one of the others. So when you're communicating, you don't have a direct connection as clear as a matching, but you do through the oversoul, because the oversoul also has an opening for you to be able to tune into it, and it shares the wisdom of all of it combined. So I just wanted to clarify that. Soulmates are different. Soulmates are souls that you have made arrangements to have other lives with. And so you have a recognition that occurs time to time where you meet up and you made an agreement prior to reincarnating. You say, okay, at some point we're going to meet up and we're going to play this role. So you may have had many lives with them or several lives with them. You may have had only one life with them. So that's what a soulmate is. And you come together to meet and to play a role for each other for a period of time, and then it either stays together or it goes on separate ways, because as long as it doesn't serve, it does not bind to each other just because they're soulmates. There's an understanding. It's not like the human mind's understanding that, you know, we get into a relationship and it needs to be permanent. It's really as long as it serves, and then after that, let's move on. The soul itself, basically, at this point, and I'll backtrack a little bit more afterwards, back into the soul, how all of this comes together. The next level, of course, we have the mind. The mind is a powerful computer, but it's also very powerful axis of consciousness. The mind has 2 hemispheres. One is the receiver, processor, and the other one is the expressor, experiencer. So you've probably heard the right brain, left brain. And then, of course, the frontal lobes and all of that stuff. But we're looking at the right brain and the left brain. The right brain itself is the receiver. It's what they call the intuitive creative mind, part of the brain that makes up the mind. The right brain communicates with the body. The right brain communicates with your human entity. Your right brain communicates with your soul. And your right brain communicates through your third eye, which is the third eye is a window. It's a transmitter receiver that connects with other souls on different planes when it requires other. It also has the capacity to give us the multi-layers of each of the playgrounds. I don't want to go too deep into that. I mean, you guys are just new to this in most cases. In some cases, you may have a deeper understanding. So the right brain takes all this information, the communication, and then it processes that, it creates it, that intuitive knowing, and then it shares it with the left brain, and the left brain actually creates the reality in front of us. So what we see, the form, and so forth. We're holographic expression. The movie around us is a holographic expression. It's just really a light show through energies, but at the same time, you know, it makes it very real, which is the purpose of us experiencing ourselves in a form, because we want to experience it in a what we call a real video game, because it is what we create as a video game in when we're looking at a certain level of reality at this point. What was I going to say? Yes. So the mind itself is always expanding from the different inputs that it has, and it alters your reality along the way. The mind also uses programs, and the programs are basically what we've programmed within ourselves. Now, we have basic programs that are handed down from the lineage. Programs that we have brought in that the human entity may bring in as saying something we want to address or take care of or experience in this life, and then move through it, transmute it. It also has some programs that are coming from the soul itself. And then the rest of it, we basically learn from our experience of life through what we learned through our mother's womb, what we learned through coming onto the playground, in a freelance way where we experience ourselves through our parents, through whoever we're engaging with, and also what we're exposed to others and exposed to the media, exposed through schooling, exposed to different rules and ideas. So we create these ideas, these programs, these belief systems, and all of these belief systems have nots and all of that stuff, and right, wrong, good, bad, and all that stuff is programmed. But also the limits are programmed. Limits meaning that this is all we can do. This is how we play the game. This is reality, blah, blah, blah. And the mind works with that information and creates that. Now, when we originated here 15,000 years ago, we did not have a particular software program that was later installed 10,000 years ago. That program we call the ego. Ego is a software program that resides in the mind. Some people call it the small mind within the big mind. The big mind is basically, your overall mind. It's the true operating capacity of the human experience. But we have this other compartment, or it's not even a compartment, but it's an operating system that works, that is utilizing what we call operating systems. So the ego itself, a lot of people believe that we require an ego because then we wouldn't know who we are. But we've never really used an ego for 5,000 years, because when we understand what the ego is designed to do, then we'll have a different appreciation for it. Now, we're not here to kibosh it, saying that it's a bad thing, but it had a usefulness. And now we're going through a point where, is it still useful? Does it still, present an opportunity for us? Well, obviously, we're going through an observation. Now, when it comes to the fact of saying, who are we? We realize that we're in a physical form. We give ourselves a name. We understand that we are playing various roles. We understand also that we're a combination of not only a physicality, a human entity, and also a soul that is expressing and experiencing itself. It does refer itself as, I am an expression of all, okay? But it doesn't define itself in the same way. What I mean by define, labeling and saying, this is who I am. It's a very open platform, okay? So it says, yeah, I'm in a male body, but I'm not a male. I am playing the role as a doctor, but I am not the doctor. I'm just playing the role of the doctor, and I have the skill sets that I'm utilizing to play that role, okay? It has that understanding. It also understands that, in fact, whatever roles it takes on, that it is all a role and it's very flexible, okay? It doesn't say, this is who I am and that's it. And then it needs to justify it and keep reinforcing that. It doesn't work that way. The mind is also always open to expand, to grow. What I mean by that is that it's always choosing to experience itself in a grander, much more powerful way. It's always open to take the wisdom of all the different inputs that come in and see what next level of creation reality that it can create, what level of playmates it can engage with other aspects of ourselves, which we're all playmates to each other. So this is the next part of it. So it's doing all of that. So it's really expanding. The mind itself was designed to go from a third dimensional consciousness reality creation and to be able to operate into a fourth, then a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, a eighth, and the ninth level of consciousness. That was the original design from 15,000 years ago. So that was put into play as how it was designed to operate. When the ego was plugged in, that operating system was part and parcel of an operating system when we had the inverted matrix installed. The inverted matrix was installed 10,000 years ago. And the purpose of the inverted matrix is to make everything look backwards. Now, a matrix is a necessary component of experiencing ourselves on a planet. Every planet has a matrix. Every planet is communicating with each other's matrix. What the matrix does, it creates a consistency as a platform of an operating system. So if you took it as an analogy of a computer, if you look at a computer, the computer has a Mac operating system or an OS operating system, or it may have a Windows operating system or a DOS or a Unix or something of that nature. Those are different operating systems. So a matrix is the main operating system for the whole planet and anyone engaging in the planet and playing it. So we're always in a matrix. However, there was a superimposed matrix that was installed 10,000 years ago, and that matrix worked in reverse. So that matrix made everything backwards. So that's when separation came into play, because we never really experienced separation before. It became part and parcel later on when the inverted matrix came in. It now says we're not one, we're separate. It also said there's right, there's wrong, there's good, there's bad, there's polarity, and there's all of this other stuff that we've experienced. What was right, what was true was shown as false, what was false was shown as true, and so on. So that inverted matrix was put in 10,000 years ago. The inverted matrix is no longer functional as of December 22nd, 2019. So we're now in a reality where we are only operating in the natural organic matrix. However, we're not experiencing it yet. Now, so when the inverted matrix was put in and the moon was brought in, because the moon was only brought in 10,000 years ago as a powerful transmitter, as a satellite, basically, and it's actually a vehicle rather than a planet or, of that. I won't get into the details of it, but it actually, that's why it doesn't rotate. There's only one side. It moves around in an orbit. It's a very inconsistent orbit, but it played a role, and it also regulated the control structures in the physicality. Now, of course, it's not doing that any longer, and it's not. So the moon was used to project and support and upgrade the inverted matrix. And then the connection it had to us is called the AI, artificial intelligence, which we call the ego. So the ego itself was designed and plugged in for it to interpret and to utilize as a way to control us to work in the inverted matrix. If you want a representation of the inverted matrix, look around you, and that's everything of the inverted matrix. All the systems are all designed in the inverted matrix. Anything that projects polarity. So for example, if you take any of the systems that exist, you take the medical system, the educational system, the legal systems, and all the other systems, the governmental, the monetary systems, if you take a look at any of those systems, they're all been designed in the inverted matrix. So everything works in backwards. Instead of supporting you, it does the opposite. So if you take even the simple thing is the medical system. If the medical system was operating from the true design, it would do everything possible to create an environment where it would support humanity to be in the most pristine state, rather than doing the opposite, where it actually compromises the physicalities on the planet. Same thing with education. Instead of stimulating creativity, imagination, which resides in the right brain using all the different inputs, it stimulates, forget about creativity, the education will program you to play what the inverted matrix projects and the past or the older information that is not accurate in the first place. And I don't go further than that, but to understand. So the ego, what it does, it actually takes this, because we have a subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind records all our experiences, and it also records any labels we put on the experience. And what do I mean by labels on experiences? For example, say you have an interaction with a family member, okay? Now, until you label it, it's just an interaction, it's just an experience. But then the inverted matrix will say, that's a good experience or it's a bad experience. And then we apply a label. Now we store that in the subconscious mind as, okay, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough because my mother and father said, I'll never amount to anything, or I'll never, do anything of any value. So we took on that story. It doesn't mean anything, but later on it starts to mean something because we keep hearing it, and then we start seeing reflections around us or other people kind of supporting what that means. So we start to create a label. So that's stored in the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind stores that information in the subconscious mind as that experience means this, and that's what the label is. Now, if you have a similar experience that your subconscious mind says, oh, wait a minute, there's something that matches here. And the subconscious mind will say, hey, listen, we had this experience, this meant this, meaning that we weren't worthy or not good enough or something of that nature. But it just does that. And now it depends on how strong the label is and how it plays out. It will create adjust your reality or how you see the reality around you. However, when the ego gets involved, which it loves to do, it's the characteristic part of it being the critic, right? So the ego will not only take that belief system that you're not good enough, it's now going to create a multitude of stories to support it. It will take examples from other people. It will take examples of what you've seen in movies or what you've seen in anything. And it will also take whatever you've experienced and add much more intensity to it and much more to the story, so that once you experience it, that experience comes up, the ego mind goes into this whole story creation, and it creates now an activation in your emotions, and now you create polarized emotions, which is part of the inverted matrix also. So just to understand, I'm just giving you some basics here. I don't want to get any deeper here because, I want to open the platform so you guys can ask questions, and we can go into looking at how we want to address whatever we're going. So any concerns or anything that you would like to expand on. But just so that we carry on with that. So right now, as we understand, we're going through the process of the ego is the only thing that keeps the inverted matrix backwards operating. Now, many of you have heard 3D and 5D. We're shifting from 3D, we're going to 5D, okay? And I wanted to clarify a little bit about that because there's a misconception about it, and I wanted to make it understood that this reference point that we're going from 3D to 5D is not quite accurate and it's not quite understood. Because if we had to look at our natural organic 3D, it is not a representation of how we're experiencing life right now. Because our true organic 3D was still with oneness, it was still very much in cooperation, collaboration, and in playfulness. Where we work together, we wouldn't have polarities, we would not have separation, we would not have, the wars and all of that, haves and have nots and all of that, because an organic 3D does not support that, because it has too much consciousness to understand what we've experienced, what we are designed and capable, and what we are here to do through all of this. What we really are referring to is inverted 3D and 2D. 2D is someone that's experiencing itself as a physical form and nothing more. Meaning that I am a construct of what my ego mind, they're not going to say that particular, but their ego mind actually dictates that I am this or that, and I am a physicality, and that's it. We have very little or basically no essence of connection, that we're much more than this physical form. But the inverted 3D basically has consciousness, but it works backwards. So you're basically going back and forth, right, wrong, good, bad, all of that stuff. So really, the transformation that we are doing right now is going from 2D, inverted 3D, which are the two categories we play within the inverted matrix and within the artificial intelligence, we call the ego, and we're going into an organic 3D and an organic 5D, which we've already stepped on the two platforms for that. They're kind of merged, but they're also working on two separate channels. So basically, we're shifting from 2D to inverted 3D and inverted 3D to actually organic 3D and organic 5D. And we're also unprogramming ourselves from everything, because our past, if you look at our past and all our program are 2D and inverted 3D in the inverted matrix. All of those constructs are there. So we are purging all of that. We're clearing out all of those constructs and operating systems within ourselves. So that's what the process that we're going through right now. And also the ego itself, we're kind of taking out of the equation step by step, so that it's no longer required to create all that chatter within ourselves and create all those stories and all those polarization. Because the only reference we have in the inverted matrix, inverted 3D and 2D, is what the ego likes to use. Now, just to add one last thing. The purpose of the ego itself is to devolve. It's actually to bring you backwards. It's not to push you in evolution. It doesn't mean that you become more enlightened. It becomes less enlightened. That's why we started off in organic 3D 15,000 years ago and really integrated in the organic 3D. And then when the inverted matrix got put in and the push was to inverted 3D, the ego now went into the inverted 3D, converting our operating system to inverted 3D and 2D, so that we would not be conscious at all, or very minimally conscious, to be able to express and experience ourselves in what we call the playground of life. So that being the case, or being said in that fashion, that's the purpose of what the ego was. So now that we're moving forward, we're on the platform of organic 3D and organic 5D. And now the purging of all the subconscious mind and all the memories and you know, the Akashic records and all of that stuff is being purged. But we're also this putting out of service, basically, the ego. Now, I know some people have said, well, if I don't have the ego, I won't understand, you know, I won't have the same labeling of myself and, you know, everything that I've imagined myself to be. I will lose that. No, it doesn't. You actually lose the labels, you lose the rigidity, you lose the categorization, but you're an open platform. So yes, like I was saying earlier, that you go into, I'm playing this particular role. So if you take Marco, you know, Marco wouldn't label himself with the ego that I am this male, I'm a musician, composer, photographer, and all of that stuff. He would see himself as this powerful source essence in a physical body that can play completely free, but has these amazing skill sets that is offering to humanity, not only consciousness, but through sound and music, through the playing of instruments, through photography, and then that's only a small part of what he expressed. And all of us, all of you here, are basically, you know, expressing in different forms who you are, you know, as sourceness in this physical form, having this experience, bringing in and utilizing all of that. So now we have experienced a fragmentation, which we are now unifying. So the first oneness aspect and unification that's occurring is the mind with the soul, with the human entity, with the body. And now is a beautiful, powerful communication and sharing. So you're creating a unification, a oneness within your body, within that expression of who you are. And then we start creating that in our reality with other playmates. And so that's part of the process. Now you see everybody not as an individualized, well, they're an individualized aspect, representation, but they're an individualized representation of who you are, because it's another aspect of you, in a sense. So that's what's occurring. So all of these changes, alignments, and the retooling that's going on, the rewiring of our mind, the two compartments are actually operating differently. So you're going to see different changes around in your life, and you're going to feel also part of the purging is emotions and things are coming up to the surface at this point in a very powerful way. And that can stimulate different experiences within yourself. But this is all part and parcel of the changes that we are going through at this time. So, yeah, I can go on for hours, but I'd like to open the platform for anyone liking to get clarity on anything, and anybody else that wants to share, like Marco, if you want to share something, Shoshana, and anybody else in the group. I mean, we have a chair there that people can sit on the hot seat, and you'll get the microphone, and you can share with us here, and then I can interject, or one of the others can share our wisdom, our experience of what we're going through. I find this a very powerful, amazing time. I've been here for over 62 years, and when I arrived here in 1957, the soul came very, very connected and aware. Even the human it didn't actually come in and use a human entity. It used a simulated human entity, but it used an alien entity, of course. But it had carried a lot of wisdom. And for me, as the observer, which I had to take the role of as an observer a lot to observe humanity, I found it always very odd and limiting, and feeling that I was here way, way too early to do what I came here to do. I mean, some of you have felt the same way, because humanity wasn't moving very much, but it gave us the opportunity to experience the human experience, to have a deeper appreciation, a deeper understanding, to look at the mechanics a little bit more, and also to go through the stages that everybody else was going through. But right now, because the movement is happening so quickly, it is a very, very exciting time for us to be on the planet. Now, all of us are here because we've agreed to be here at this time. There's no errors, no mistakes. There are no, poor alignments in any way, shape, or form. Nobody got dragged here. You're here because a part of you said, I want part of this. And you have to understand that even the combination of the soul, the human entity, and the body, and also the family dynamics, I'm talking the human family dynamics, there's a huge communication that's established ahead of time to see the usefulness for them all to come together and to play particular roles within this expression. So I'm going to change the screen so that we get to see each other, all the four windows on my end. So let's play. I'm going to unmute one here. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you very much. I have really enjoyed what you have to share, and I feel like I would like to share that I, as a practitioner of Chinese medicine, there are so many similarities to what you're talking about and what I know to be true. One is that you talk about the 12 strands of DNA. There are 12 meridians in our body, and each of them have an emotional aspect. When people come in for treatment, we're really having a discussion about kind of finding a harmonious homeostasis, really, in the body, mind, and spirit. And it's very lovely to hear from your context. I have two questions. One is that a lot of people who walk through my doors, they are people that are kind of like what you experience, which is, they are maybe more comfortable in the fifth dimension. They feel like, what am I doing here anyway? I'm so much more comfortable in the ethereal space. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts of if their comfort level is going to get any, if they're going to get more comfortable, and if there's anything that I could do to assist in that way, other than to let them know my experience that, there's a vibration that is in the ethereal world that is a much faster and clear and more succinct vibration. And it's very different in this kind of 3D world that we live in. There's like substance, and it's clunky, and, there's pains and aches and this kind of thing, and people, they have a hard time rectifying that. So if there's anything that you can speak to that. And then the second question is kind of a segue, which is that without going into a lot of story about it, I wonder what your thoughts are about if I were to play Marco's music, and if in your mind it would be kind of like a download of everything that we're learning here because you're working together in this, if the vibration of his music would be enough to kind of transmute for them.
Well, it definitely would be supportive, and it does carry a certain frequency that will stimulate a remembrance, because most of the information I'm sharing is it is stored within each individual. It's, you know, it's just a matter of accessing it, because this is why people feel more in resonance, and it resonates with certain things that are shared, because they already felt it inside. There was never a confirmation because of everything around them did not confirm it, or it showed the opposite. So this is one of the, and Marco would be the best one to speak about that. But from my observation of Marco's music, it stirs up certain, not only emotions, but energies within it, and a remembrance. So it creates a frequency that almost feels more like home in a sense, right? So, but I will let Marco explain more about that part of it, because I mean, he's guided very powerfully to create such music, and us working together, it's a nice combination, because sound is very moving. It's very powerful. It readjusts, you know, how the energies move through our body. It adjusts how our mind, it adjusts the feelings, the emotions within ourselves. And so music has always been very powerful, because if you look at the form of creation, it's always through sound, okay? First, there is the sound, and then there's creation. So in essence, this is why we use the throat chakra, because that is the creative, that's the creator of form. You know, when we communicate through sound, and at times it doesn't even have to have sound, but through the frequency it transmits, it helps change the form, because each one of us do that. And I'll let Marco go a little more in detail with that, and then I'll go back to the first question that you asked about the different people, because I can relate with that, because I do have been a practitioner myself for many years, mainly through, you know, working not in Chinese medicine or anything like that, or on the physical form, but more on the emotions, the operating systems, and so forth. And the fact that I had skills to communicate with people's souls and their human entities, their bodies, and so forth, we'd be able to get information to create alignments with themselves. But that I've been doing for 35 years, and also coaching and whatever else. But I can relate very much, because I've been doing energy work for people for a long time too, and coming in and feeling, yes, I don't belong here. I'd be better at home, and, you know, in this other frequency. But I'll clarify that a little more. But go ahead, Marco. I'm going to unmute you so that you can share your things about music.
Yes. I felt guided to connect with Franco. Maybe for the first time in my life, I felt guided to connect with someone in order to co-create, because in my perception, it feels like we are gathering information from the same energy field, although he gathered knowledge in his own way, and I got knowledge that I use in a more artistic way. But it seems like the sound signature is in the same parameters. It seems like it's the same family that is talking. It's just that I hear sounds, and hear more knowledge, more information in terms of words. So to answer your question, I think there's going to be a congruent message between his knowledge and the sounds that carry the music that is not my music, is not by all means. It's just, I am just a facilitator. So I think they are going to feel emotionally, and also in terms of vibration, a confirmation of what Franco is saying and of course Franco engage people at the conscious level, while I'm engaging people at the emotional, feeling, vibrational level. So I think it's a good team, it's a good combination, and that's why for the first time in my entire life, I am really considering co-creating with someone, in this case Franco, because before I could not really find anyone that has the level of purity, and it wasn't somehow engaged and fascinated by the system, by the money, by the fame, by the survival, by the scarcity, by all those polarity games that I have never had any fascination about. So I think this answers your question. Definitely, it will be at least supportive of Franco world to listen to the music that I am offering. Definitely.
Perfect. Thank you. So the thing is, the music is very supportive. The information that is shared and so forth stimulates your own knowing. And I find that people that are exposed to that information actually starts to change the music, and also starts to change the way you process things. Because of the vibration of the music, the consciousness that it carries, the vibration, not only the vibration, but there's also spectrums of light within the vibration and frequency of the music and the sounds and the instrumentation and everything else, and also the information shared, that it actually activates certain codes within you and so forth. I've seen over the years people really changing in amazing ways. And actually getting to a point where, you know, their life changes in such a fashion that it's so much more aligned with them. So being exposed to that information and the music and everything else is very powerful. It's an instrument. It's not like we're doing it for you. We're not. We're just, you know, like, I can't say as Franco that this information that I have is my information. It's coming from my own soul. My soul is connected to 84 souls. You know, it's a unified soul, but it's also from an alternate dimension. Well, it's actually from a parallel universe that has already created a planet Earth, that has gone through the experience. So it's communicating through me this information because it's very instrumental at this point, but it's really activating what's within yourself. So that's how you kind of use it. And there's lots of information that I've put out there and continuously putting out there. So, you know, this is not the only resource of what we've talked about this evening. Going back to the question there regarding, you know, when you're facilitating people, and, you know, even when we're not facilitating, a lot of us feel very foreign in this environment. What really is happening is that we're remembering more of what we call a home frequency. Okay. Let me make this clear. Okay. When we're talking to the body, it feels at home. The body feels at home on planet Earth because that has a really close connection to Gaia and planet Earth, because it has that consciousness and that awareness within it, and it has the range of vibration. However, the physicality itself is also able to evolve, and it's doing so. So when we are evolving as a whole person, a whole expression, the body feels more at home. So that's the first. So the unhome is when we're not playing in alignment with our natural state. So when we're playing in our natural state, in our physical form, the body already feels more comfortable. The same thing with the human entity. Human entity itself is always evolving. So if we're playing a very backward game and it really wants to do, then it feels out of alignment. So it's going to push to go into alignment. When we're talking about the soul itself, okay, so souls are coming from multiple dimensions. They can come from higher dimensions, and there are many, many souls that have come from higher dimensions because they're coming here to bring that vibration, that dimensional consciousness in physical form. On planet Earth, very, very specific purpose. The soul did not make a choice and then regret it. It may feel uncomfortable. it's really when the ego gets involved and other parts become misaligned that it may feel that way. So when you're working with somebody, when you work with them aligning and connecting with the body, because I've had that experience personally, and I've had to make some changes around that, because to me, being in a physical body, because of the consciousness and because of the energies of the soul and everything else, it felt very limited, restricted in a physical body. I always thought that physical body is heavy maintenance and so forth. And that did not work very well, because first of all, I wasn't the one saying I want to go home. I wanted to see things move quickly so I can go be done with my project here on planet Earth, right? Type of thing. So it's like, okay, let's get it on the high gear here. Let's get it going so that I can be done and go back to my playground, which feels more natural. But we have to understand, we have no home. We have a familiarity, familiarity. I'm probably not saying it totally 100% correctly. Familiarity with a certain frequency that we've made ourselves home with. That means if we were on a fifth dimensional planet, or a sequence of the dimension, fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, ninth dimensional, could even be 12th dimensional planets, that we've got used to that frequency, and then playing in a planet that doesn't even represent, or was not representing even organic 3D, third dimensional consciousness, and was third inverted 3D and 2D, it's not going to feel very comfortable, for sure. And then, if there's a judgment that comes around it, or a comparison that comes along, it says, oh, I want to go home. So what I usually do with people that I'm facilitating in that regards, I usually work with them to align with them that the fact that we're here now, this is your playground right now. You've come here to bring your powerful expression from that dimension that you're from the planetary part. Because if somebody says, oh, I'm I'm Syrian or Pleiadian, or I'm Lemurian, or whatever I am, reptilian or Arcturian, there's so many different things. Say, well, if I'm one of those, well, no soul is any of them. A soul does not relate with any of it. It may have lots of experience in being in those forms, because it may have reincarnated many times on those planets, or it really got comfortable with that frequency and then that imprint, that it may say that. Or they've come from that planet, and well, that felt way better than this planet. But it's really assisting people to connect with this realm of play, with this experience here. And it's not about, in any way, shape, or form, feeling that, oh, wait a minute here, I don't belong here. Because a lot of people tend to believe that. So let them to get at home and to be fully embodied. Because unless you embody it, you're not going to be able to utilize the body and your experience as a human fully. So this is kind of what we're looking at, is doing that part of it, is really grounding them to themselves, but then grounding them to the body and the planet itself. Because once they're done, the soul can leave. The body can still be here, the human entity can still be here, the mind can still be here, and another soul can drop in. You've probably heard about drop-ins. You've probably heard of soul swapping. Maybe not, that's become much more common. As long as the physicality and its role that it's playing is very vital, or plays a vital role. I'm having word issues tonight. Then another soul can step in, and that soul can be from a lower dimension, a higher dimension. It can be from different experiences, but it will take on the body and continue the role, but upgrade the role, because it brings in a different energy and a different level of excitement too, because it's coming fresh into the body and it probably hasn't been here. There are physicalities or people around that have had more than one souls that have come and gone. That's kind of experience. So it's basically, hopefully that's helpful for you in the sense of helping them ground themselves to the physical form, and just appreciate that you're here, and that the limits that they've experienced is the limits that that we can just dissolve, because it's not required for us to maintain that. Not anymore. It was never a requirement before, but it was harder to move out of those limits and those rules of what it meant to be in a physical form, what it meant to be human, because what we've played up to this point in time of what represented as a human experience was not our true design. It was a modified version of it, which was a great little play, a great experience, but now we're going into our truer form, which will support us more. Even if you're coming in from a ninth dimension, for example, will support us more. Most likely, you're going to choose the playground that supports organic 5D, and then you just have to purge all the operating system that we've collected. I mean, there's a lot of star seeds that have come over the years, and more are coming in. What star seeds are souls that have never been here, but have a lot of wisdom from different star systems or different planets in different forms, that they're bringing their wisdom, their energy, their consciousness, their operating system, just to elevate the human experience. There's, specific souls that you call indigos, crystal souls or crystalline souls, or you have souls that are rainbow kids or whatever else. Those are all tuned very differently to be able to bring and have a specific purpose and so forth. But it's really about grounding ourselves with the body, the human entity, the soul, and the mind, and then playing fully. Because once a soul leaves and goes home, they say, oh, well, I'm home, sort of thing. But when they reflect and look back, they will miss the opportunity they had playing here, because this is pretty awesome playground to play. So anyways.
Franco.
Yes, Shoshana.
I have a question for you. Actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
So as you say that we'll be more supported to be the souls that we are, would you say there's a period during the purification process that's a little bumpy, that might get a little crazy transitioning to when we can feel more at rest and like, oh, okay, this feels more like it, being here as a soul on this planet?
Well, as you go through the process that we're going through, is the soul is going more into the driver's seat, and it's becoming more as a more powerful influence in how we shape our reality and our world, and how we feel within the body, we feel within the playground we call Earth. But the bumpiness comes in because as it steps in, then certain parts of the patterns and the programs and so forth that represent something different will have a tendency to kind of react, okay? Especially when there's a restructuring going on within ourselves and how we choose to play it. It does alter the way we play the game, so that may create, the ride up and down type of thing. As the strong energies are coming in, and this is what is taking place right now, is these strong energies are coming in, the soul feels more comfortable, but other parts that have been playing at a very lower frequency will feel uncomfortable. But that moves through. I mean, we become more and more comfortable as the energies are coming through. So we're going to have some bumpiness, but the bumpiness is just basically the older aspects of ourselves that are resisting. It's not really so much the soul, creating unrest. The soul can get excited, especially when it sees openings and when it sees certain frequencies coming through. It likes to go, and it goes in the driver's seat and really tweaks the activations within you, so that it may bring up some powerful locked up emotions, like the facilitator that asked the question earlier, that it will bring up trapped emotions and energies and so forth within the bodies themselves, so that it will create more openings and say, okay, great. As we let go of that, the restrictions go, the old versions will go. And so that will facilitate movement. So it can feel bumpy, but it's going to get smoother and smoother and smoother, and it's going to be more comfortable, because at times, you probably, all of us experience that certain waves feels like, this feels more natural. This feels more in alignment because it's supporting that part of it. And then sometimes you'll have a kickback, which is basically the kickback is the other part is say, whoa, wait a minute, we don't know about this energy. We don't know about the state. We have to keep it under wraps. We got to keep it in secure state and secure mode or whatever we want to call it. So that in that case, it will present some resistance and some launching of programs that want to stop it.
So in that case, is there a quick something that you would suggest to help during those bumpy moments to focus on, to switch into more alignment with the soul?
Yes, there's a few things. Okay, so one of the things is as the energies are coming through, welcome the energy. So you're basically going to say, okay, I'm sensing these strong energies. I welcome the energies to move through me. You're basically allowing it to, you're not going to resist it. You're not going to say, oh my God, I got to brace because there's another strong wave coming in. So what you're going to do is allow the energies to come through you. You're going to move through the energies. That's the first part. The second part is you can actually call in your soul and say, okay, so fully embody, step into the driver's seat, activate your home frequency. What the home frequency is the frequency that the highest frequency that the soul has been able to access through the various incarnations and various experiences that it may have had or had. So because in each dimension it plays, in each playground it plays, it picks up more and more of these higher frequencies. So what the soul's home frequency may most times are higher, it is higher frequency than what we're experiencing in human form. So you say, okay, activating, I call forth to activate my soul's home frequency and to emit or transmit through my whole body, aligning my mind, my soul, my human entity, and my body to that home frequency. With that home frequency, now you're engaging the soul's frequency to align with the energies that are coming through, and it will actually help with the riding of the frequency, riding through the different deprogramming that you may go through, certain the emotions that come up, and the certain symptoms that you may feel physically. You can turn on a third component, which is basically, you can say, okay, I now choose to activate. You can almost see a dial on your chest, around your heart area or just above it. You're turning a dial, and that dial, it's basically what you're doing is you're saying you're now activating the highest source essence frequency that your body can contain. So now you're activating the frequency that's already in you. You're just dialing it up. So you're tuning up that higher frequency within yourself, and you're able to do that. So all of those things, it's not to negate any of it. It's only to complement and support, because you want those changes to take place, but you want to do it also without the same level of resistance and discomfort. You want to have that opportunity to really experience it like ride the waves. Like you guys are in Hawaii, so you have waves, so you could either fight the waves, you can be beaten up by the waves if you're trying to stay rigid, or you can say, okay, time to take the surfboard and now to ride the waves, enjoy the waves. So the same thing with the energies that are coming through. As they come through, just ride the waves in that regard. Yes, I think you had another question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I do have another question, but that's wonderful. I often felt that to fully enter myself as like my God self frequency, at times it felt like it's such a high vibration, it would blow my circuitry. And so it sounds like what you're saying is like now we're starting to open more, where we can contain more of this frequency by slowly welcoming it. Not necessarily slowly, by welcoming it as much as we're capable in each given moment, clearing, so we could welcome more and more.
Yes, correct. And the thing is, as you say, I activate the highest source essence that my body can contain at this time. That way it goes to the highest point, but without overloading, so that what happens is you're experiencing that higher vibration, and it creates openings for further vibrations later on as you go along. So you're able to access more and more. Your body can contain more and more. And this is why I say what your body can contain, the highest source essence, or what you can call God self, that your body can contain at this time. And each time it goes up because we're opening up more and more. And of course, like you said, if you get rid of the programs, because the programs is really a huge obstacle for us. It's a learning obstacle. It's not a bad thing, but we don't want to give it power, because programs are designed in a lower frequency. Programs activate certain lower frequency emotions that, you know, adjusts as the way we feel.
Beautiful, thank you. And my next question is, you know, it might be a doozy, but I'm wondering, how does, where does God, the divine creator source, like fit into all of this? You know, the story when you were speaking about, you know, when we felt, I don't know, I might be changing your words some, but, you know, like separation, or, you know, and I thought of, oh, the Bible story of the Garden of Eden, and when we fell from the Garden of Eden and we forgot who we were, and we thought we were separate. But how does God fit into the concepts that you're sharing?
Well, we have to understand, I don't use the word God that often at all because of the multitudes of definitions and labels that people have put into it. So I call it source essence, because the involvement of source essence is fully involved, because every part of existence is source. All levels of consciousness is part of source. We're playing within the source field, and the consciousness of source field supports us to express ourselves. Now, that's a heavy loaded question, because when we're talking about gods, we're talking about creators, and there are many, 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 many levels. There's prime creators, and then there's sub creators. Okay, so any soul that has reached a certain capacity of consciousness, a certain capacity of ingenuity of creation, steps in as a creator and creates new playgrounds, creates new physicalities, creates new operating systems within it. But it's all still within that source. It's still all in that platform. You never leave anything. You're basically in this whole field, and within the field, you create clusters of a holographic expression experience. And within that, you create it, but it's still connected to all of it, and all of it is there. As source, there's no right, wrong, good, bad. There's no separation. As source, you know that there is no separation. Not only know it, you can't even conceive unless you create the idea and the story of it, which is part of creation too, because you wanted to experience that. Well, let's create the game. And the game is a game. You know, everything is a game, right? So it says, okay, well, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can experience within self. So there are many, many different levels of creators. Now, nobody's superior to anyone else, but they all take roles of saying, okay, I'm going to support this creation because I was involved in this creation, and I'll keep it in a level of functionality and oversee it. Okay, so there was a team involved for Planet Earth, and that team, which my soul was involved in, retooled Planet Earth. Planet Earth's been here for billions of years. If you want to talk in Earth times of years, it's been here for a long time, but each time it's retooled and retooled and retooled. So, you know, the humans that were here before, or whatever life form that was here before, were very different. And scientists and archaeologists have discovered that they found remnants of physicalities that were here as dating back as 250,000 years ago. And they found that it was a very different construct altogether, because there were different series of creations or seedings at that point in time, including...
Who created Earth?
There was a team that was involved that created Earth. But is it still within source? Because it's still source consciousness that creates it. But the thing is, this would take a whole while to explain how it all started, because when you're looking at it, source split itself up in a sense and saying, I keep my sourceness here. Within that sourceness, I create a section of sourceness that is now able to create different realities. I hold the energy at one point, and this will create multiple realities. So within, if you took a screen, a computer screen or TV screen, it's made out of pixels. And each of these pixels emanate light, emanate, different frequencies of light so that you see a picture, right? And that's how we see us on screens, right? Say source is that whole screen. That's just a simple analogy. And then all the little pixels in there are expressions of source. So you cluster certain sections of these pixels, and within these pixels you create worlds, forms, galaxies, and so forth, which are just fields of light, fields of consciousness, where source experiences itself. And we are those expressions. But if you look at it, when we're talking about the split, it didn't say the screen split in half and say half of the screen goes and plays and the other half of the screen just observes. It's like every other pixel, one pixel goes out and plays and creates, and the other pixel holds the essence of sourceness, or what we call the field. The field of all consciousness is the field as observer. So that's how it's created. But it didn't all get created all at once. It got created in layers, because this process started a long time through the expansion, because source usually expands its creation and then goes in contraction, which is basically all the different pixels or spectrums of sourceness actually combines and creates a cluster of consciousness that goes out and creates more later on. It's a bit of a process to explain, and it does get a little bit complicated. In my mind, it's very clear because I've seen it many times, and it's very familiar. But in the essence of when we're looking at the simplistic is that we're on this big beautiful screen, and within the screen we're having what we look like an earth in a human form and playing on a playground and so forth. Doesn't matter what role we play, there is no right, wrong, good, or bad. There is no punishment. Those were plugged in as concepts and ideas when the polarity separation, right, wrongs, were utilized as part of the experience. Because as sourceness, it doesn't matter what role you play, you're still part of you're still source, you're still creating, you're still experiencing, because everything is an experience. Nothing is outside of the experiential realm. And then the same thing of whatever we may experience, everything is just part of an experience. I don't know if that gives you enough clarity around that, but we can explore that a little further another time. I know I've gone quite a bit over my intended time to communicate or talk, but does that make any sense to you, Shoshana?
But yeah, you did a great job. I told you it was a doozy, and that's probably a whole seminar in itself.
It is.
You did
It
great.
is.
Thank you.
It's true. It is a seminar.
Thank you so much, Franco.
You're welcome. Bring that up. Okay, so thank you again, everybody, and it was great. And until next time, go out and have some fun and play with life. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to really enjoy the experience of life. I mean, we've never been in a position to experience it in the way that we are experiencing it now. So thank you again.
Woohoo. Aloha. Mahalo.